Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from around the world. Welcome to today's episode of the Pivotcast. I'm your host, Sarah the Pivoter. Here on the Pivotcast, I interview super rad humans from around the world doing rad things in all walks of life. This is a platform to share their voice and their story and bring more value to you. In this live interview, we're going to hear some super amazing and rad ideas from Nicole Cherie Barker, who is one of my favorite people, an amazing seven-figure coach that came from Bartenderland. So she's got some great stories for us. She's going to give us the DL on some simple steps to make sure that you can have your own internal validation system so that you start to build your own belief in yourself, have that Wonder Woman confidence, and you stop relying on others and giving your power away. So we're going to be walked through how to self-soothe our distressing emotions and create this system so that no matter what is happening in your world, you can dynamically self-soothe and pave your own way to success. So without further ado, I will be bringing our guest on, Nicole. Please do share your comments wherever you're tuning in to live from today, or share in the replay so that we can see who's watching. Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey guys, how's it going today?
Yeah, it's good. So today we were talking about so many different topics and what we could have spoken about. Well, before we get into internal validation, actually, can I ask you to introduce yourself, a little bit about your story and why we chose this topic?
Yes, but first we have to get one thing out of the way. Am I
Yeah.
allowed to cuss or not? I didn't ask you.
What? Oh yeah, you can totally.
I can talk much faster when I can cuss.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
guys,
totally allowed.
I'm a seven-figure client attraction coach. But as Sarah mentioned, I came from Bartenderland. Long-time bartender, about 15 years behind the stick. I was on my way to law school, as we all are, right? And I met a boy. Derailed the whole motherfucking thing. And I ended up being a bartender, much to my mother's dismay. She did get over it once I started competing in international cocktail competitions, and they flew me to Italy. And so then it was all forgiven, right? But dropped out of law school, did the thing, and really kind of fell in love with bartending because of the people, because of that interaction that you get. It's different every single day. And looking back now as a 37-year-old semi-adult, man, I know some lawyers, and I'm glad I'm not one of them. So it all works out the way it's supposed to. But about two years ago now, I made a shift. I actually got fired from 2 bartending jobs because I'm special like that, and I decided, what am I going to do with my life? What do I want? What do I want to change? Who do I want to become? And I actually took a Facebook ads course, which I sucked at, by the way. I was terrible at tech, but what I was really great at was getting clients. Like, I came into this group full of a bunch of wonderful old men. I love them so much. And I knew nothing about pixels, nothing about setting things up correctly, and was just cowboying it the whole way through. But I did watch all the training videos, and I went and got clients immediately. And in the first 6 weeks in that program, I got 10 high ticket clients, and everybody in the room went, "What are you doing differently than we're doing?" And the coach grabbed me and he said, "Hey, you need to tell me how you got all these clients." And I was like, "What, like hard?" Right. And he said, "Okay." I told him all the methodologies, and he said, "Can you teach this to those old guys that help you with Pixel?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I taught it to them, and boom, 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 they all started getting clients. And he said, "You need to be a coach." And I said, "Great, what's that?" So he kind of
Amazing.
mentored me into all the things, and I started the Facebook group almost 2 years ago. The group will be 2 years old at the end of this month. There's 15,000 members, and been kicking ass and taking names ever since.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. I love that you came into a program and ended up teaching everybody in the program.
Well, certainly nothing about ads.
Yes. So this is a really beautiful example of how when we are stepping into our zone of genius, then things get to be easy. We also have a lot more opportunity. So how can we step more into our zone of genius for people who are watching, if they're in something, if there's, what's something that they can do if they have no idea where to even start?
Well, I think that we think we know what our genius is, or we think we're supposed to know what our genius is. But the fact of the matter is that there are things that you've done in your life before you got to where you are right now, right? And when
Yeah.
you were doing them, you felt like you were really good at them, right? You're like, I was a gymnast when I was a kid. I'm a really good gymnast, right? But then it turned out that life had more things for me, and I wasn't just going to be a gymnast until I was 97 and die, right? There was going to be more things that happened. So in the moment of where you are right now, it's acknowledging the fact that even if you feel like you're really amazing at something, that there's chances are there's something else that you're also really amazing at that it leads to. I was an exceptional bartender. I was really good. I was making $10,000 to $12,000 a month as a bartender. That's insane, right? I mean, industry standard is like 3 grand. Like, I was killing it, and I thought I was amazing at bartending, and I was. But my true zone of genius, as it is unfurling now, is actually helping other people to get clients. Like that's that's a skill set that I built in Bartenderland because
Yeah.
of regulars and helping people to develop and helping bartenders to make more money. Like I developed all the skill sets that I use now in Bartenderland to step into a new zone of genius. So the first step is acknowledging that your current zone of genius is not your last one.
Yeah.
And that means that by taking action and doing things that are uncomfortable, doing things that are new, you have the opportunity to uncover your next zone of genius because there will always be
Mm.
another one.
Yeah, I love that. It's the evolution of, who we are as people and how we want to show up, but also taking your old skills and repurposing them, right? It's not like they're completely unrelated. There's always some sort of knowledge transfer that you can take into the next thing.
Mhm. We don't start over when we choose a new niche or choose a new industry. We're not like, oh, here's the blank slate, like, and now you know nothing,
Yeah.
right? That's not how it works. We carry whatever experiences we had with us to the next step, and that's what brings our zone of genius to the forefront faster. The experiences that I had in bartender land, the experiences that I had in gymnastics land, all
Mm.
contribute to the skill sets that I have now. And I see that really commonly in coaching where people come in and they're like, oh, or any entrepreneurship. And they're like, well, I'm brand new. It's like, Becky, you're 47 years old. You're not brand new. Stop
Right?
saying you're new. None of you are new.
It's not like she just came off the assembly line, like, oh, here's a fresh one.
Although that would be interesting.
That would be. So, a lot of people, as they're going through these changes, they obviously have a lot of emotions going on. We're talking about creating an internal validation system. Now, what is it about this change process that makes people so afraid of it, even if when they really want it? I know this is something you talk about quite a lot.
So acknowledging change in the first feeling of change is scary because biologically change means the unknown. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen next. And if we were all deer on a hillside, right, roaming free, and one of the deer was like, "Hey, I think that we should go over to that other hill," and everybody else in the herd is like, we know this hill has grass. We know there's water at the bottom. No one's been eaten by a cougar in months.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably not a good idea to go and adventure somewhere else. So, biologically, we stay put. We do
Mm.
what we did yesterday because that's what's safe. That's how we survived. And it is a survival mechanism to repeat the same pattern that did, in fact, work because you are still alive today.
Yeah.
So, it's not a surprise that change is difficult or change is scary because biologically, we shouldn't change. We should
Mm.
just do what we did yesterday because that is tried and true, that is
Mm.
proven, and that is safe. So stepping into the space of change goes against everything in your biology. And that's what makes it magic. That's what makes it special. That's what separates the animals from the people is that we have the inclination to change and that we can overcome our biological urges to open different doors and create different results than we had yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And because anytime we just react to something, we're just repeating the same action. But as you say, it's to serve a purpose. But at the same time, it limits from where, like, intellectually we might want to go.
Mhm.
So a lot of people, when they're in this process, they usually have overwhelm, right? And they're just staring this deer in the headlights. No, she's continuing that analogy. Um,
Let's
so
just stick with deer the whole time.
yeah, well, see, you know what is really funny because I actually have these that I found in the forest.
See?
So
See?
there we go.
There you
Um, so when someone's at that kind of beginning point, they've got a ton of overwhelm, right? They're facing this fear and they're just staring at this like big monster in front of them. What would you say is the first step to soothing this emotion for this?
Okay, so do you want my very unpopular opinion of this?
Yes, I want the truth of what you truly believe and know to be true from your experiences and your clients.
Okay, well, everyone hates it when I say this one, so it's more fun to say because I know how much it fucking gets under people's skin. Okay, nobody likes this shit.
Yeah.
Overwhelm is a motherfucking choice.
Yep. I
Okay,
agree.
you're choosing. You're
Absolutely.
choosing it because the fact is, we can be overwhelmed by anything, right? Literally anything. We can wake up in the morning and be like, damn, there's so much paint on these walls. How did this paint get here? There's so much paint. Imagine the paint on my skin. Ah, paint everywhere. It's so gray in here. We can choose to be overwhelmed by
Yeah.
anything, right? And so if you're choosing overwhelm, You get to ask yourself, what the fuck is this really about? Why am I choosing to be overwhelmed? Because choosing overwhelm is also one of those mechanisms that keeps you safe. If it's too overwhelming to think about going over the next hill, you just stay right here, right? So,
Yes.
overwhelm is actually an emotion that is triggering you to keep you where you are to keep you safe. So, you can say thank you to your overwhelm because that choice
Mhm.
that you're making keeps you safe. And you can say, thank you. I appreciate the fact that I'm safe now, but I do want to go over to the other hill and I do want to see what's over there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose a different emotion instead. And this is how you start choosing emotions, okay? Going from overwhelmed to confident is not a motherfucking thing. Okay? You don't make that jump. That's not a direct bridge, no direct
Yeah.
path. It's not
There's
there.
a lot of layers in between those two.
Exactly. And so really what you have to do to shift any emotion into any other emotion is go through neutral.
Mm.
Okay? So if you're in overwhelm, think about being in first gear. Okay. For all those of you that know how to drive a stick. And if you don't know how to drive a stick, you need to learn this. This is a
Yes,
life
agree.
skill.
You should have learned how to start.
Life skill. Your daddy shouldn't have let you have a license until you could do that. Okay. So if you're in first gear, you can't just jump over to second, right? You have to pull back into neutral and then go to second.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing emotionally. So if you're in overwhelm, allow yourself to feel that feeling. What does it feel
Mm.
like? Where is it in your body? What's that sensation? If overwhelm was a color, what color would it be? Allow yourself to really feel it so that you know it,
Yeah.
because knowing it helps soothe that feeling of distress of the unknown and change. So allow yourself to know intimately that feeling. And then ask yourself two very important questions. How does overwhelm serve me in this moment? Well, you know it's keeping you safe, but there might be another reason how it's serving you. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how does overwhelm limit me in this situation? Well, it's keeping me in the same thing and I can't change and I can't do anything different and I want to go over the hill, but I can't, right?
Yeah.
Does this make sense? That's all we need. As soon as you can validate your own feelings, not somebody else telling you it's okay, you telling you that it's okay. It is okay to feel the way that I feel. It makes sense to biologically want to do the same thing that I did yesterday. And it also makes sense that I want to go over this hill, but I'm a little bit nervous about it, right? It makes sense. And once your emotions make sense, you give yourself that internal validation of saying, my feelings are relevant.
Yeah.
Boom. As soon as your feelings are relevant, you're in neutral. Mhm.
I
And
love
once
that.
you hit neutral, you can choose any direction because think about driving that stick, right? You don't have to go from first to second. You can go from first into fifth if you fucking want, right? You can
It's
do
not going to be so fun, but you
that. But you can do it.
yeah.
Reverse is going to get a little hairy, but it's there. So you can make a choice to go to any emotion that you want when you can choose neutral in between. And that's the superpower to scaling really quickly, and to moving your business very quickly, is to say, okay, I'm not going to go from overwhelmed to slightly less overwhelmed, right? But you can go from overwhelmed to neutral straight to confident. That is a choice. You can do that as long as you're utilizing neutrality first.
I love that. And I really like the analogy of using the stick shift. For those of you who don't know, I'm sorry that you don't understand, but it
Get your
really,
lives together, really.
exactly, go learn stick. Um, but that really makes it really clear, because so many people just try to go from one side to the other and like completely flip, but flips are hard. So what those steps in between are what usually are missed, and that's why I think they're choosing that overwhelm as well. I've heard saying to yourself, I'm doing overwhelm right now, or I'm doing
Mhm.
anxiety. That can also be kind of a way to snap you out of that loop that you're in your mind.
Yeah, it's the acknowledgement that you're choosing it and that it is in fact an action. It's not something that's happening to you. I think that we say that a lot of like, I have anxiety, right? Like I
Mm.
have it. It's like, well, you have a head on your neck, right? You don't have anxiety. You
Yeah.
choose anxiety. And that radical responsibility is what empowers you to make a different choice.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that most people don't know how to articulate what they're feeling, right? So I think that's also a big part of this problem. We want to feel better, we want to feel nice again, so we start to seek it outside from food or people or drugs,
Anything.
alcohol, anything, right? And then we dive more into work, and we say we're busy, we're productive, but actually we're just hiding from our own emotions, and we don't even know how to name them. So when you have someone like one of your clients doesn't really know what to even say, what's something that you get them to do to get more in touch with their emotions and their energy?
Well, first and foremost, it's the acknowledgement that like I'm not a big fan of this because I'm big on responsibility, right?
Mm.
but it is not your fault. Right? It's not your fault that you don't know how to express your emotions. Like
Yeah.
that was supposed to be something that was modeled by parents, by life situations, by the village, if you will. And
Mhm.
quite honestly, most of us in the age range that we're in right now,
Yeah.
like if you're 30 to 50, you were not modeled this.
Yeah.
Okay. Like your mom did not model this for you. Your mom modeled either complete destruction, right? And chaos, or she modeled perfection. My mom modeled perfection, right? Like where she um no matter how upset she was, no matter how much the world was crumbling, she put on a happy face because
Mm.
that's what she was taught to do,
Yeah.
right? And like that was the right thing. That was being a good mom, right? She wasn't doing that to fuck me up. She was
Yeah.
doing that to protect me,
Right.
right? And so it's not my fault that I don't know how to process emotion because it wasn't modeled for me. I never saw my mom mad until I was like legit 17 years old. I never saw my mom mad.
Wow.
Like ever. So when I was angry
You
as a
had no idea.
child, I was like, what's wrong with me? Right? Like I
Yeah.
have a demon inside of me. Like I'm angry. But it was like she had already gotten to that point in her life where she could subdue the anger and I didn't know what to do with it. So I wasn't modeled that behavior.
Yes.
So first and foremost, acknowledge that for yourself is that there's nothing wrong with you. There's you didn't do anything bad. Like that piece is so fucking important. Everyone wants to skip that, but there has to be an acknowledgement of the fact that there's nothing wrong with you because you don't feel your emotions intensely.
Yeah.
It's just this wasn't presented to you as a child, and so you didn't learn it.
Yeah.
If the alphabet wasn't given to you, would you fault yourself for not being able to read? Like no, right? So this is something that you get to develop as an adult, which is different than developing it as a child. So it's practice, just like anything else, but
Yeah.
it's also watching. And this is going to sound like the dumbest thing in the world. Okay. But this is what I tell my clients who are emotionally shut down. Okay. I make them go watch the Vampire Diaries.
Oh my God. I love it. The Vampire Diaries. Okay,
Okay.
so why the Vampire Diaries?
Okay. And really, it could be any drama, but I choose the Vampire Diaries because all those dudes are hot.
Right.
Okay.
You love vampires, so you know it's good.
I love vampires. The dudes are hot. Caroline is my motherfucking hero. I'm all about it. Okay. Fuck Elena and all her trash fucking complaints. I hate her. Okay. So I make them watch the Vampire Diaries because on shows, dramatic shows, and I'm not talking about reality TV, I'm talking about intentionally dramatized kind of, Netflix
Right.
shows. Their faces emote at a higher level. Okay.
Mm.
You could actually do this with like any sort of like Spanish soap opera
I was
too.
gonna say Spanish novellas sound like what we should watch.
Right? But they're going to be modeling a series of emotions, everything from joy to sorrow to pain, to like a lot of angst. Like there's all of these different emotions in there, and allowing yourself to feel with the characters is the same
Mm.
as what would have happened when you're a child, like allowing yourself to feel with a parent, right?
Right.
And especially because in shows like this, we kind of build an affinity. Like it's a little strange, right? But we build an affinity with these characters where we love them, like we feel
Yeah, we want
connected
them
to
to
them.
succeed and all this stuff.
Yeah, and we build a relationship with these characters, and that is enough. That is enough for them to showcase emotion and for us to model it and mirror it back. So
Mm.
as you're watching the show intentionally, it's to say, okay, what feeling is Caroline feeling right now? And identifying her feeling and then asking yourself, when do I feel that feeling? Right? Do I feel it along with her right now?
Yeah.
Is that connection there? And really starting to identify it. And by the third season, like you've got it on lock because here's the best thing about a show like The Vampire Diaries, right? They're teenagers. Okay. And they're like in their early 20s, but they're all like D-list actors. And in the beginning, they're not good at it. Okay.
Okay.
They're not good at acting. So season one is like trash, right? But so are you, right? Like you aren't good at emoting yet. So it walks you through. And by
Yeah.
season
You get
three,
the layers.
you're better at it because you grew with the characters on the show. And so it
Ah.
has this like psychological effect on you of learning how to emote. And actually, this is a great trick too for getting really good on your lives.
Mm.
Is
Yeah.
because we show our faces in different ways. And when you watch people that are on their first lives, they're like this.
Yeah, or like looking down
or,
notes.
or reading off of the thing. Right? They're
Yeah.
terrified of the camera. But once your face gets better at making emotions and moving this way and looking at the camera and doing all the things, once you get better at putting your hands on the screen and doing that, like it's easy and people connect better with your lives. You get better traction, you get more views, you get more sales, like all those
Yeah.
things happen. But when you're watching actors, specifically actors who are journeying through becoming good actors, you become good with them at reading their
Mm.
face.
I love that. Yeah, because I mean, I've definitely been shown the literacy wheel, right? So it's like a wheel of emotions, and it's got the like six main ones. You know, like the basic happy, sad. What is it? Angry, mad. You know, and there's I forget which other ones, but then it breaks it down into three layers. And so usually for people who like to study words, I'll give them that because they can then look up the definition for themselves and kind of map it out. But I think from a visual perspective, that's amazing. You know, I think I have memories of my friends who are actors, you know, they're staring at themselves in the mirror, moving their mouth around and like making all these facial expressions. I always thought that was like, why are they doing that? But that would make sense. They're just practicing getting their face into these different expressions
Mhm.
to communicate.
Well, and with the list of like emotions, right? If you've never been modeled those emotions, even when you
Understand. Yeah,
even when you read it, you don't feel it. You might comprehend it, but
right.
that's not the problem, right? Like that's not the constraint in your body isn't knowledge. You understand why people are mad. Like
Yes,
logically that makes sense, but you don't feel anger the same way they feel it. So by watching somebody model it and also audio, remember that like when we're watching TV, we're also hearing
right.
the articulation of a voice and hearing something like right now when I'm talking to you, that vibration is
Yeah,
right going through the magical ethers and it's going
right.
into your little ear holes and it's actually touching you. So my voice is touching you. And
Yeah,
so that's a physical like shift that happens. So when you're watching TV and doing so intentionally, not just popping potato chips, right?
right.
But when you're watching something like this, you're not just seeing it visually, you're also getting audio, but you're also getting touch. So
Mm,
all three of those senses are being hit, plus logic is already there because you're following the storyline. So
right.
you're incorporating all of the senses and imagining blood in your mouth, of course, because you're watching a vampire show. So you're getting all of the senses in one hit. And so that's a faster learning pattern. We know that the fastest way to learn something is to be modeled. We know that
Yes,
it's not logic. Is that we don't learn like when we're 5, we don't learn that logically. We learn from modeling, right?
yes.
It's not we don't people don't do as they're told, right? We don't tell them what to do and then they do it.
Right.
They do what we do. And
Yeah,
so, as an adult, you can intentionally create that situation for yourself where you are being modeled to and accepting and receiving that modeling and then following that behavior line intentionally.
yeah. I love that because it really, you know, breaks that down into layers. And for a lot of people, I think we forget obviously how we've learned as kids. But this is why when learning a language, for example, we have to if you go somewhere and you immerse yourself in it, you pick it up so much faster. Not only because you can't speak another language, but you're watching these interactions all day long of other people. So you're figuring out context when you're listening to something and seeing what's in their hand or what they're doing.
Mhm.
So I think that's really good. Now everybody has permission to watch the Vampire Diaries.
Well, it can be any of those shows, right? Like
Yeah.
any of those kind of shows, especially when you're looking at young actors. Like
Okay.
if you're starting with like a Harrison Ford level thing, like you're not going to get it because he's
Yeah.
already so good at what he does, right? Like go find someone who's not good and like watch the seasons build up. I mean, any of those kind of shows are
Yeah.
going to give you that progress of emotion as you watch the actors develop themselves.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. Now I've got some Netflix searching to do. uh, permission granted. I've like not watching shows for a while. It's like, okay, this is my homework. I have to do that.
It's good to learn.
So no, for people, obviously, this is really good information and some really great steps for people to start taking. And I think the first, you know, you said we have to acknowledge that we have these emotions, and then really we have to feel them. That's what it boils down to. Because without feeling them, they get stuck in our body, and then we can't actually shift into neutral before we go into another gear.
Yeah, and feeling like they're called feelings for a reason, right? Like they're meant to be felt and it's uncomfortable to feel them if you haven't felt them in the past, but it's creating enough safety inside of yourself to know this very important thing. All feelings flow, every single one of them. There's never been a human on the face of the planet ever who has been in one emotion their whole life.
Yeah.
All feelings lead to another feeling, and you will not feel this feeling that you feel forever. Even intense amounts of grief. You know, my son's father died when we were 24, and I felt like I was going to die. Like I felt like I was going to feel that feeling forever. And I do feel it sometimes. right? It'll come in waves and I will feel that feeling again. And I will be right back in my 24-year-old self, like unable to like feel like I can do anything,
Yeah.
but not forever. No feeling is forever because all feelings flow. And so the safety that we need in order to feel our feelings is the acknowledgement that it's not forever. And so you can be mad. You can be really fucking mad and
Yeah.
it's not going to last. Watch a 3-year-old, right? Watch a 3-year-old throw a temper tantrum.
Yep.
Like that shit's a couple minutes, right? And then they
Yeah.
fall asleep and then they wake up and they're like, I love you. You're a crazy
Exactly.
person. Right? But that's because 3-year-olds have it all figured out. They allow themselves to feel their feelings so that they flow more quickly. And that will happen for you too, is that as you practice feeling your emotions, you won't have to feel them for so long. You won't have to be so mad for months. You could just be mad for minutes, right? You can give yourself permission for the feelings to flow fast.
Yeah, I really like that. I remember I used to hold everything inside and it would just get this pressure. It would get to a point where it'd either implode or explode. So I'd either be really suffering on the inside or I'd lash out at the people around me. And now as I allow myself to feel these things, sometimes the old habits still come in, but it's much, much easier. I can catch myself faster. And then if I feel like crying, then maybe I cry for like 3 minutes. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, ready to go. But if I had held that in, then it was like the whole day I'm feeling this sadness because I'm not letting it just flow through, as you said.
Yeah. And I mean, energetically think about like that feeling of I like to imagine that like we're all sharing it, right?
Hmm.
Is that there's a giant pool of feelings, right? And there's a pool of each color of feeling, right?
Yeah.
So there's an anger pool and it's just boiling and bubbling and lava, right? And so for a minute I feel it, right? But I need to give it back so that it's your turn to feel it. And so I go
Um,
through and I feel that, and the faster I can feel it, the more intensely I can feel it, the faster I can get it back to you, because you might need that anger in this moment, right?
mhm.
You might be in a life or death situation where that anger saves your life. But because I'm holding on to it and keeping it when I don't really need anger, I'm stopping you from me having it when you need it. And so having that like collective feeling of, I don't know, just like connection is
Yeah.
that I'm going to feel this feeling because I need to be angry right now because I got to tell this motherfucker to shut the fuck up, right? Like I need it. I need this
Yeah.
shit, but I'm only going to use it for 5 seconds because somebody else out there might be needing to save their child right now, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm holding on to that anger, I'm taking it from someone who needs it right now. Same thing with, I mean, for those of us who like anger, that resonates a little bit. Well, let's talk about joy, okay? Is that when we're feeling that feeling of joy, right? Of that like blissful, like moment of crystal clarity when you know 100% that you're
Mm.
exactly where you need to be right now,
Yes.
like that feeling of awareness, it sparkles and tingles all through you. There's a pool of that. And I'm going to allow that to flow and I'm going to feel it so intensely. And then I'm going to give it back to the collective energy because you might be having the worst day of your life right now.
Mm.
And I don't need to hold joy. I know what it feels like. I have it. It's there. It's accessible. And now it's your turn to really feel that. And when I bring it into me, I add more energy to it as I put
Mm.
it back. And it gets more intense every time we recycle the energy through ourselves. So by
Right.
giving it back to the collective, I'm allowing you to access it maybe when you need it way more than I do right
I love that. I think as soon as we shift the focus from me to we, a lot of things change because you're acting from a different place. And as you said, that reciprocity of the energy between the people, I mean, it's always going to be different and it'll be less charged for you if you can have it moving through faster. But I never considered that as like putting it back into the pool so someone else could take it out. That's really a beautiful kind
And
of
remember
image.
that when you're starting to feel it from, like, if you're starting to get mad or if you're starting to feel joy,
Yeah.
think of that as receiving it from someone else too,
Mm.
right? It's like somebody else just put it back so that you could have the opportunity to feel it. And viewing your feelings as an opportunity is different than I have to feel my feelings. I
Yes.
get to feel my feelings, right?
Yeah.
What a gift emotion is, because what would the world be without it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that phrase that you just said as well, not instead of I have to, I get to. I think this is really crucially important because so many people think, oh, I have to do my work or I have to do this. But what does that give you? How can you receive because you're doing that? And so it's that flipping that coin over and just seeing the other side from a different angle. But the language is so powerful. So many of us use words and phrases every single day that really keep us limited and keep us locked into place.
I mean, neurolinguistic patterning is a thing. Like
Yeah.
the way we say things, and language to language, it's all there. It doesn't matter which language you're speaking. Like your connotation and the picture that forms in your head, and the physical response that you have when you say, like, just try it for a second. Guy, just try it for a second. Like, put your hands in your lap. Ugh. Been talking for all week. Put your hands in your lap, flat down. Okay. Now close your eyes for a second and say, I have to go to the grocery store.
I have to go to the grocery store.
Okay. Can you feel the tension in your palms? Like feel the weight of your hands.
Yeah.
Okay. Now say, I get to go to the grocery store.
I get to go to the grocery store.
Okay. Your fingers relax.
Yeah.
And the weight becomes lighter. When we say I have to, we're in a state of heavy. We're in a state of obligation. We're in a state of making yourself do something. But when you say I get to, the physical response in your body is being a little kid again, of like, you get to go to the water park today, right? Because it's programmed. I mean, neurolinguistics are absolutely programmed into feeling. So the word choice that you use, especially when you're talking to yourself,
Yes.
really matters. And being aware of the words that you use is a skill set all on itself. Like
Yeah.
every single day, we can become more and more aware of our patterns and what we consistently say to ourselves and to each other. And I think that in the beginning, it's, when people start coming to me in the very beginning, infantile stages of this, like we work on self-talk. But what I do to help them to do that is to have them acknowledge how differently they talk to themselves versus someone else. Okay. It's like, if you think about talking to your mom versus how you talk to yourself, if you think about talking to your friend or your child or your dog, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
You use a different voice for each of those people.
Absolutely.
What is the voice that you use for yourself? And like really identifying what that voice feels like, the personification of that. So many of clients come to me from this place of how much they're torturing themselves because they have this really like hard-handed, very heavy, like they would never talk to their child like that. And they talk to themselves like that. And I'm like, so is it any surprise that you're stuck in overwhelm? Is it any surprise that you're not getting the results that you want? Because if you yelled at your kid all damn day like that, would your kid do anything?
Right.
No, they would curl up into a ball and cry all day.
Yeah.
Like if you're treating yourself like that with your patterns, with your words, you're making an impact. The thoughts that you have matter.
Yeah. And thoughts become your beliefs, which become your actions. And then that's where, you're operating from. So really changing those thoughts. Now, if people are stuck in this loop, in this pattern, they acknowledge it, right? Then they start to allow themselves to feel it. But do you have a trick for getting that acknowledgement any quicker aside from practice?
It's absolutely positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing else. I mean, that's how we train everything. Literally everything inside of ourselves, every animal, every child, every spouse.
Yeah.
That is how you train, is with positive reinforcement. So it's not telling yourself like, oh, you fucked up again, right?
Right.
It's acknowledging when you do it the way you intended to do it. Like, oh, look at that. I gave myself a compliment and I actually felt it. And
Yeah.
like pushing the pause button for just a second to acknowledge yourself and say, huh, I did that. One of the concepts that I teach in my programs, it's called the done board. Okay, you guys know what a to-do list is. Everyone's familiar with that shit. Okay, is that you make a list of all the things that you're supposed to do today, and then you get down to about, I don't know, 5 or 6 things in, and then you realize that you're not going to be able to get this all done today, and you start feeling like shit about it, and then you don't even do one more thing because you're like, fuck it, I'm not going to get it done today. Why should I even fucking try? Okay.
Right.
And then it's a perpetual cycle. And then tomorrow you do the same thing, but you add all of the shit that you didn't do yesterday to the top of your list. And you are in a never ending cycle of laundry, never getting it done, right? It's never fucking finished. And so you always feel like you're not good enough. You always feel like it's not done. You always feel like you haven't completed things. And so you're internalizing that. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. But the done board flips that over. And instead of writing down everything that you have to do today, you only write down what you did today. So it's like, oh, interview with Sarah, right? And I write it down and I feel the sense of satisfaction as I write down what I've completed. I positively reinforce myself for doing the things that I did today instead of focusing on what I didn't get done. Because we all know that, where focus goes, energy flows, right?
Yes.
So if I want to get more done, then I simply need to focus on what I have already gotten done instead of focusing on what I didn't get done. And
Yeah.
that's the same thing with feelings, is that instead of focusing on what you didn't allow yourself to feel today, focus on what you are allowing yourself to feel today. Even if it's like just something right now, you're listening and you're like, I'm interested,
Mm.
feeling the feeling of interested. Positively reinforce yourself for that by acknowledging it and saying, where do I feel interest in my body? What's the sensation that that brings to me? What color is that feeling? What does it
Mm.
remind me of? Just focusing on it is positive reinforcement.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really important because for people that are not familiar with this, they might feel silly, right? And I think everyone, depending on their culture as well, maybe they're not used to celebrating their wins or positive things that happen because you don't want to be showing off or that just wasn't done, right? It was just expected. And so allowing yourself that permission, I also have clients like write a permission slip to themselves. And whenever they feel like they can't do something, then if they can catch it, to write it down and give themselves permission so that they can, work through that.
It's the same thing as not feeling your feelings, right? If you weren't modeled celebrating your wins,
Mm,
then you're not going to celebrate your wins because you weren't modeled it.
right.
So if you want to learn to celebrate your wins, immerse yourself in a situation where people do consistently celebrate their wins,
Yeah.
without being shamed,
Yes.
without being, ostracized. So many of us were like, I mean, I'm a completely different human than I was before, right? Before I did all this work. Like, I mean, I never celebrated wins ever. Nothing was
Oh,
ever good
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
No matter what. I mean, I graduated high school with a 4.2, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, and it was not good enough. Like nothing was ever good enough. Not for me, not for my family, not for anybody. I never felt good enough my
Yeah.
entire life. Like it literally until 3 years ago, I didn't even know what it felt like to feel good enough. And so it's it's an acknowledgement too of like you just weren't modeled this. And that's okay because as an adult, you can choose what situations you put yourself in to have other people model it for you so you
Right.
can learn it faster. You can read a book about it, but really taking action and like doing it and practicing it and being around other humans who consistently practice it, that's what does it the fastest because you're stepping into the frequency and like the energy. Like that's why coaching is so important. Is like,
Yes.
when I went up a rung and I spent a lot of money on a coaching program and I was surrounded by other people who spent a lot of money on a coaching program, I started to assimilate to their behaviors just like they were assimilating to mine, right? That frequency and that energy was there. And in that room, we consistently celebrate our wins. We talk about how much money we're making. And
Yes.
we do it without being ashamed of ourselves. I can't talk about how much money I'm making with my bartender friends because
Right.
they're appalled at 6-figure months, right? It's
Yeah.
disgusting to them. And so you don't have that positive reinforcement from other people. So then you feel like you're ashamed and you're not able to give it to yourself, right?
Mm,
Shame stops your ability to give you what you need. So, yes, like we want to create internal validation and we don't want other people to tell us what is and isn't, but you are the one that chooses which kind of people you spend your time with. So, if you're
absolutely.
spending your time with people that shame you and guilt you for the way that you're succeeding in life, then expect an uphill battle for internal validation. But if you
Mm,
spend your time around people who are focused on themselves and not telling you what to do because they're focused on internal validation, that's going to give you the space to focus on your internal validation.
yeah. Beautiful. And I think this is why, sometimes people are also scared of change because they're afraid that everything's going to change around them, including, their external systems, their friends, their circles, everything. But again, that's all a choice, right? If we're choosing that we want to go over there, we have to recognize that pool looks a little bit different. And this doesn't always carry over. And that's okay too, but it's just the choice that you're making based on where you want to be.
One of the hardest things about becoming the person that you want to be is letting go of the person that you used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people forget that when they're growing and evolving, it's very exciting, it's very fun, but there's also this grief process that comes into play because, as you said, the old version of you is gone. I was even thinking about that this earlier this week, even just from earlier in the year, the older version of Sarah's gone, like quite literally with my hair. But it's now all of a sudden I'm showing up differently. Now all of a sudden the things I'm interested in, want to spend my time on are different. The way that I'm conversing, the way that I'm bringing things in. That also means that some of the people that I got on with really well or maybe gelled with, it's starting to be a bit sticky. And it's like, oh, okay, wait a second here. But it's a choice. If I'm going over here, then I can choose to sit in it and be uncomfortable. I can choose to just accept them and meet them where they are, or I can choose to move on if that's what's necessary, right?
And being able to honor other people in wherever they are
Yeah.
is the same as you being able to honor yourself wherever you were, right?
Yeah.
I can look back at 10 years ago, Nicole, and not be super proud of that, but also have the thing of like, that's the person I needed to be at the time to
Yes.
get me to here. I learned lessons as that human that allowed me to be who I am now. And so I can have gratitude and honor my former self while still letting go of her so I can become, right?
Mm.
And it's the same with my friends. Like, I mean, I don't spend time with the people that I spent time with 3 years ago because, I don't drink all night and I don't stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning doing coke, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't have any common interests anymore. So I don't hang out with them. But it doesn't mean that they don't matter. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I have to completely let them go or that I'm never going to talk to them again. Because the fact of the matter is, if I ever did want to do coke at 4 o'clock in the morning,
You know where to
I
go.
know exactly where they are. It's there, right? And I can still energetically connect to that past version of myself and it's not gone. It
Right.
still lives in my memory, right? So I can go back to being who I used to be anytime I want.
Yeah. I love it.
Choice.
Amazing. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for all of these amazing tips. I'm sure people are furiously taking notes or going to be watching this back. I know I'll be directing several people to it because this is so important. People need to really work on their own shit first, whether you have your own business or you're leading a team or your parents, just to be a rad human being. This is something that we need to work on and understand for ourselves that it's okay. We don't know how to do it. Just like it's okay if you don't know how to play the piano because you never took lessons as a kid. So this has been super, super helpful. Thank you. Now,
It's been
can
great to
you
be
tell
here.
us where people watching can find you? What's the best place to connect?
Absolutely the Facebook group. It's called Unicorn Client Attraction Secrets for High Vibe Wonder Women. And don't worry, Wonder Women is a mindset. It is not a gender bias in my world. So I am open to all of the genders. Come on in. But the
Mhm.
group is absolutely where you're going to find more content and more connection pieces and 15,000 other people that are really on this journey of expanding the way they think and feel about themselves.
Beautiful. So for anyone who wants to start practicing their internal validation systems and being around the right environment, this group is for you. I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. We do all sorts of fun get-togethers that Nicole puts on for us, both within the group and outside. So definitely get your ass in there. All right. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much for being with us today. For those of you watching back, I'd love to hear what was your favorite tip from the session today from Nicole's great advice on soothing internal validation systems, and what do you think you might still struggle with? We'd love to hear from you guys. And I would just like to remind you that you remember real pivoters are human beings just like me and you. So all it takes is the choice to do something different. Go out and choose something that's going to make you sparkle today. Keep on keeping on. We'll see you guys soon.